So with the latest Battle for Azeroth alpha build, as well as the initial raid test, they've also introduced these start of expansion scenarios that mirror the Legion ones in a way, except with the Legion ones, Alliance and Horde are working together. Now we're working against each other. And Blizzard said that, just as with past expansions, the cinematic directly leads into the expansion. And this doesn't quite seem to be the case, or it's a little bit weird to reconcile the two things, because what we're doing here is we're going to take part in the Battle for Lordaeron. Now, of course, the Battle for Lordaeron, you could argue when we get there, is already underway. There's a lot of destruction around the place, but nonetheless, there's times where people like Sourfang say, right, it's time to engage with the Alliance now. And you're thinking, well, he did in the cinematic. So it's a little bit weird. But nonetheless, as soon as we see Battle for Azeroth go live, then this is what we're going to be getting, this scenario here, which we queue up for. There's an Alliance version, a Horde version, which I'm going to go through here. So, as you can see, when the Alliance arrive, the battle is underway. It's just that there's a few things from that cinematic that are not visible. We'll go through those later. So we're due to meet up with an Alliance captain here, who takes us to the front. Now, here we can see a scene that looks sort of similar to what we saw in the cinematic there. Certainly you could imagine that the siege has been going on for some time here. So in this scenario, the aim is a final push to actually break through to Lordaeron itself, break into it and capture the city. Obviously at this point being led by Greymane, because he's got the biggest beef with Sylvanas on a personal level of the Alliance leaders. Now, the scenario itself, again, much like the Broken Shore, if you happen to be the only one in there, then, you know, there's other NPCs that will help carry it for you. Each phase will take longer. If there's loads of you in it, as obviously when the expansion launches there will be, it'll be like full raids, then each phase will actually go fairly quickly. There were quite a few phases bugged in this one. I had to do the Horde one several times over, but eventually got them all done, so you can see how they're all actually going to appear. So in this particular one, there's only a few others with me, so it's taken us a little while to do each one, but it's not excessive. Even if you had to do this on your own, it's not an excessive amount of time that the scenario takes. And I'm going to guess, like with Legion, once you've done it on one character on your account, you'll probably get a free pass on others if you choose not to do it. Now, one thing I did notice is when you're going around here and you're attacking members of the Horde, is you see that in terms of the Alliance, there's a lot of different races involved here. This is almost the full Alliance. You've got human Stormwind Guards there. You've got Night Elf Druids and Danasa Sentinels, you know. But what you do notice is you don't really see any gnomes fighting there. You've got the Dwarf Riflemen. And that's because, as you can just see there, all they seem to be doing all fight is cowering. Doing nothing of any use whatsoever. Surrounding themselves in like frost traps and cowering from the mighty Horde. And I don't know why we keep them in the Alliance. I really don't. Now, the Horde, of course, they get a similar thing, but this time it's called to the defense of Lordaeron. And your first task as a member of the Horde is to rally to Sourfang. And you're given the task of evacuating the city of its civilians. There are Alliance infiltrators, so as well as telling civilians to evacuate to the Mage Portal to get out of Lordaeron, we're also having to tackle those. Obviously, any gnomes must be killed on sight. Just as with the Alliance, you know, sometimes when you notice you've got more people, then you can complete each section very, very quickly. And when it's just one or two, I mean, this one, you can see I've got, you know, there's more than one party size. I've done this particular scenario with a very large raid group, and I've done it also with just one or two of us. And you do notice the time difference there. So when Battle for Azeroth launches, if you're straight into it, it's going to go fairly quickly. assuming there's no little lag bugs or anything like that. There were a lot of these when I was doing this, but of course this is the first time it's gone up there. There's been a huge wave of invites going on, so obviously the servers were struggling under it all. One thing you do notice is after this, the Emerald Dream is going to be an awful lot of Night Elf Druids light. All these Druids of the Claw. Not many of them make it out alive. Then at this point, we've evacuated the city, and it's time to go through the portal to meet Sylvanas just outside, where we're going to begin the defense, effectively, in terms of a direct assault. This is where you sort of get the impression it doesn't quite time with the cinematic, because although the siege itself, I mean, sieges can take months, of course, so there's nothing to stop, you know, the events of the cinematic having taken place sometime before this, and this is just when we're going. But, you know, when you're just looking at what Saurfang's saying, you're just getting the very strong impression this is the first time he's engaging with the Alliance, when, as I say, he featured in the cinematic itself. But anyway, this is the point where we sort of break out to try and tackle the front line of the Alliance, which is now on our doorstep. While we're fighting these guards, the War Chief Sylvanas is getting ready a secret weapon in order to try and repulse the Alliance lines. Again, what you're seeing here, of course, you know, human storming guards, dwarf riflemen and women, Danasa Sentinels we could see over there. We could see Exodar Peacekeepers. You know, not really noticing any gnomes, are we? There's no gnomes getting involved, we notice. Just saying. Just saying. So, at the same point as a member of the Alliance... King Anduin's now coming up to the front. And we've got to... we've been beaten back a little bit. And now we've got to face off against the Horde's secret weapon. So, the Azerite War Machine. The Goblins have been hard at work on this one, we assume. And it's our job to take it down, because this is the thing that is going to cause us a certain amount of trouble, shall we say. So, with the Azerite War Machine done, presumably we can finally assault Lordaeron itself now. That's their last major line of defence. But, of course, as a Horde player, we have the equivalent thing. And what we're doing here is defending the Azerite machine. And this is where, for me, the scenario was a little bit perplexing. Because it's like, well, if the Alliance had to destroy the Azerite War Machine in order to complete its assault on Lordaeron, by us defending this War Machine, aren't we stopping the Alliance doing that? And yet, all the sequences take place regardless. It doesn't matter which side you're on, Horde or Alliance. The same sequence of events still occurs. So immediately after this, you know, the Alliance is still going to assault Lordaeron itself. So it's almost like, well, what are we even bothering for? So from the Horde's point of view, there's going to be 3 waves of attacks. So we've got humans and dwarves here. Very reminiscent, of course, of Warcraft 3, where, you know, that was one of the armies you would face off against. Dwarfs in their war machines and griffin riders. And then we've got, you know, the dwarf riflemen there as well. Then there's a wave of night elves and worgen. In each case, it's a mixture of troops and war machines that you're taking on. So we've got glaive throwers here for the night elves. And then the third wave, one that has no real link with Warcraft 3. So we've got the Draenei there. And then finally a gnome is actually going to join the battle. But of course they have to be in an armoured tank to do so. But, you know, that is their way. A single gnome has plucked up the courage behind all that armour to actually join us. Obviously, I'm going to be sticking on this one. Not because it's the primary threat, far from it. But, you know, they have to be taught a lesson. I mean, it does tell you something about gnomish courage. That when they do go to war, the item they choose to go to war in is a robot chicken. By the way, for all those people moaning about gnome bashing, I didn't decide to design this. It's not me that chose to have all the gnomes in the battlefield cowering and not actually fighting. It's not me that chose the tiny number of ones that were attacking to do so in armoured edifices. But at this point, of course, we're all ready. Everything's done. The only thing left is to assault Lordaeron itself. So we're just gathering here around the king. I mean, we look like a fairly small bunch here, but there's a whole army behind us, so it's all right. It's all good. Now, at this point, of course, you know, the Azerite machine was one thing. Now we come across something that is very, very strange. You're looking at this and thinking, no, Sylvanas isn't going to do this. She's raised the dead. You can see by the shields it's Stormwind soldiers. She hasn't been raising the dead of the Horde. But even this, you can imagine, is going to upset a lot of the traditional Horde, like Orc, Saurfang and people like that. And then, of course, comes the Plague. They're throwing in the Blight. And again, you think to yourself, I wonder what Saurfang is going to make of all these shenanigans. Because this is the sort of stuff that the traditional Horde, you know, the Orcs especially, but also the Tauren and the Trolls are not particularly happy about. This is a purely Forsaken way of doing battle and not something that is appreciated by any of the other races. I'm not really sure what the Goblins think of it. They probably don't care. But, so yeah, the idea here is, of course, as well as choking to death the Plague, is to try and rescue Alliance soldiers as well as destroy Horde attackers. Simple fill up a bar. Oh, okay, dead. So you res up in a medical area, sick bay area, and then get back into the fray. There really are some lovely scenes around here. So there's a full-on withdrawal here. But again, you have to wonder, well, I mean, it's all these conflicting events from both Horde and Alliance. First of all, from the Alliance point of view, so we destroyed the Azeroth war machine. But from the Horde point of view, we saved it. And yet, the Azeroth war machine is destroyed. And then again, we're ready to assault Lordaeron, then we get beaten back by this Plague. And from the Horde point of view, as we'll see in a moment, yeah, we're carrying out the Plague. But the Alliance are still going to storm into Lordaeron. So an awful lot of this, really, once you've done it from both sides and you've completed it. I mean, I'd certainly want to skip this because it's almost like everything you're doing has no consequence. Because they're trying to tally up two conflicting narratives to get the same end result. It doesn't really work for me. I mean, although the aim is to defend King Anduin, you never have to worry about that because, you know, he's indestructible. So here we are as the Horde, and you know, the same thing. You can choose just to have a gas mask, which as a paladin I probably should have just done, and just attack Alliance players in the good old-fashioned way. Or you can choose to have a gas mask, which protects you from the Plague, and some Blight, which I did choose. I realise now I really shouldn't have done this as a paladin. I really shouldn't have done this. But, you know, it was quite fun. And it's certainly a more efficient way of dealing with these guys. So you can imagine that, realistically speaking, if you're an honourable Orc warrior or a paladin, something like that, that you probably shouldn't accept the Blight canister. Whereas if you're a Forsaken anything, then there should be no real problem with it. So after this, now this part you could argue makes sense because we've beaten back the Alliance from it. We've now got time to set up our defences. At this point, Nathanos seems to largely take the lead as Sylvanas attends to other matters. So from the Alliance point of view, we're needing now to assault the city itself. Presumably some time has passed because, you know, for the story to make any sense at all, we have been beaten back by the Plague. Found another way around, something like that. We've been joined by Jaina Proudmoore. So the chief people involved at the moment. There's various new heroes join at different points. So we've got King Anduin, we've got Greymane, Jaina Proudmoore as the chief ones assaulting here at the moment. Khadgar's very much taken a back seat, you'll notice. I'm not sure whether he's going to feature at all in Battle for Azeroth. Anduin then stepping up to the plate, organising people, saying that Greymane needs to really cover the rear, which he agrees with. And so in we go. And I don't know whether this is reminiscent of the first battle for Lordaeron that we did in World of Warcraft, which was in Wrath of the Lich King, where there were like shamanistic winds driving us back. Because we've got one here where we've got a shout, not Thrall this time, who's knocking us about with winds. So it's a case of destroy the Orc defenders first of all, and then we also need to be destroying the shaman who's causing all this trouble too. Also bear in mind that the last time we assaulted Lordaeron, that Jaina Proudmoore was also with us. Only that time she put an end to the conflict by porting us all out. I don't think she's going to be behaving in quite the same way this time. In fact, judging by the flight form, you also get the impression that he's probably more of a druid than a shaman, really. But he does have chain lightning, so I don't know. Bit of one of those amalgams that I suppose Blizzard would say, oh, well, because he's a hero character, it can basically pretend to be several different classes at once. So, from the Horde's point of view, we're following Nathanos as he tries to set up a choke point to force the Alliance to funnel through one particular point, so that we can maintain superiority of numbers. You can see a load of blight canisters around where we are. That's going to come into play later on. He's very bossy. Now, of course, Horde players, I don't know whether, you know, he's shown this sort of side before. I'm mostly not a Horde player, so I don't necessarily know. He's bloody rude to the other Horde leaders, I'll tell you that much. Not just ordering them about, which he sort of can, because he's been named as the marshal for this particular part of the campaign by the war chief. That's fine. But Ian Half, bloody rude. Extremely rude to Bane. I don't know why he puts up with it. But anyway, we ride off to go and meet the Alliance as they're breaking into the city to try and cut them off, outnumber them. Again, more use of the Blight here. Got Blight throwers. And it's not always just Forsaken using them, because here Tauren using them there. So Proudmoore there is offering to teleport everyone out, but King Anduin says no, we're going to stand. If we die, we die, and that's all there is to it. And then we get the addition of another hero as well as a hanger-on. So at this point, it looks like the Horde very much have the upper hand. And then Illyria comes in with her Void Elves porting in a load of gnome contraptions. And again, the only other gnome to enter into battle has to do so in a robotic tank. Now at this point, the Alliance leaders and some general NPCs attack. You're best off steering clear of the Alliance leaders. Most of them seem to be indestructible. Illyria Windrunner is quite funny. You can, or on this one, I don't know how it'll be when it goes live. You could actually reduce her health like down here, take her health off, but she still wouldn't die. So there's no point in getting involved with them. They'll just beat you up. So just take out the non-named NPCs here. It's just a usual fill up the bar, and you just get this, as far as I can tell, purely by killing Alliance soldiers. There doesn't seem to be any other objectives that will contribute towards it, as far as I can tell. Now, this is the point at which the narrative does start to make sense a bit, because once you've completed that, it is time to retreat. The Alliance have broken through. Now, it was quite buggy. I imagine it's going to go a lot more smoothly than this when it actually goes live. And this was the last, this is the fourth or fifth time I had to do this scenario before it would complete all the way through. So I'm like duffed up by Ken Greymane there. Thank God for Bubble. So we're supposed to be following Nathanos as he leads us into a sort of phased retreat. But yeah, I can't imagine it'll look like this when it goes live. So from the Alliance point of view, again, this is where we're going to take part from our point of view in the same situation. So we're breaking through into Lordaeron. Blightcaller seems ready, so you've got ranged up against a load of Horde forces, including the Blight. And the same sequence of events is taking place. Jaina is offering to teleport us away. Anduin saying, no, if we do that, we just become the prey. We've lost. So we have to win. So in comes Illyria with the gnome contraptions. We get to ride one of them. And it's about time they came semi-unuseful. I don't know why they couldn't have built an Azeroth war machine like the goblins did. Imagine charging in with several of those, but there you go. Robotic spiders with a machine gun at the front is the best we can get. So at this point, Nathanos has started to shift himself. So really where we'd end up being is where he is at the moment. But as I say, because it's a little bit buggy, events are sort of going in various strange ways. But pull back to this point so far. Now, because I've been at this point before where it all seemed to get stuck, I just thought, oh, we need to trigger some sort of event, which hadn't happened in the previous ones. But there we go, we actually managed to get it done this time. So it's Sylvanas coming in to help cover our retreat that triggers Nathanos taking the final retreat back. And again, this is what these blight canisters are for. So Sylvanas' grand plan for covering us is to break them open behind us so that the Alliance can't follow. And this is where it all becomes a bit... when everything's brought to home, of course, because here we've got Saurfang showing his displeasure at the methods used by Sylvanas here. Sylvanas biting back, saying that this is the way to help the Horde survive, and it might be alright for him to decide that, you know, dying honourably in battle is one thing, but that would mean the end of the Horde. She will pay any price to see it succeed. And then she taunts him by saying that he's free to die at the hands of the Alliance now. Maybe she'll raise him back up when he's dead. And then she says, or maybe you'll be able to say hello to your son. And off she goes to evacuate the city herself. From the Alliance point of view, there's the Blight, which, you know, being a strong-headed paladin, I just try and wade through. Doesn't actually work out any better for me than you might expect. Almost make it through, though, due to paladin trickery, but not quite. And then, so then I've got to get back. At which point I see why everyone else was waiting. Bloody gnomes as well. So we're supposed to use one of these contraptions to get over it. Don't know where these things were before. We could have used them to bomb from behind the Horde. But there you go. Better late than never, I suppose. And then the objective for this one is to actually defeat High Overlord Saurfang, I should say, sorry. And, I mean, this is a bit of a strange one because I think we're killing him. I think we're actually killing him in the game. I haven't noted him in any part of BFA, I have to say, in the content in the alpha. Sylvanas, she says goodbye to him. She's basically making it clear that he's going to die. He seems to be accepting his fate. It is our job to kill him. I mean, we're not just going to beat him down and capture him as far as I can tell. So I think he's dying. This guy that some people thought at some point might be, you know, a future war chief of the Horde. I think we've killed him. Oh, I think someone killed him, and not me, obviously, because he killed me. So, you know, that's the scenario from both sides. At certain points, the narrative doesn't seem to quite gel together. At certain parts, it does. The end result is, though, that Lordaeron has been captured. It's not necessarily very much use. It might not be inhabitable with all that blight around, but it's certainly no longer in Horde hands. And then we begin the quest from both sides to get ourselves to, in the case of the Alliance, Kul Tiras, in the case of the Horde, Zandalar, and start off the expansion proper. But I'll cover more of that in a video at a later date. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you've got any comments or questions, ask them below, of course. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already, share with other people who might be interested. And until next time, I'll see you later.